Was it the same reason?
151. Hi, Kol Shani Zakai Babiraso. If I can tell somebody on Shabbos to do something, Rishayani B'chashikos. For that act, I could go to the Tchum, to wait until Shabbos is over for the same Maisa. Kol She'enu Zakai Babiraso. If I can't tell somebody to do something on Shabbos, Eini Rishai B'chashikos Maboy. It should say. So the Gemara is questioning why did the klal that Abba Shaul said in the Mishnah, why did he formulate it? It's Ela Sefer Kohen. It goes in a different way. Ava Machshechu Lishmor. Since a person can go watch his field on Shabbos, he can go as well to the Tchum, who maybe pairs Biyado. That's the case, then his phraseology should say, "Hi, kol shani zakai b'chashikos r'shani b'amirosu b'boy." So what is it? La'olam ha'sefer koi. Abba Shaul's statement is on the sefer. Abba Shaul ha'koi. Abba Shaul refers to the find. Amar Rav Amar Shmuel. Muter la'adam loymer l'chaveiro. A person is permitted to tell his friend, "Shmor li peros shebetchumcha, v'ani eshmor l'cha peros shebetchumi." You watch my fruit in your tchum, and I will watch your fruit in my tchum. And on that, the Abba Shaul, the Tanakama, Miloid Moidis, don't you admit to me the mutter adam loim l'chaveiro, shmorli perish betchumcha? Don't you admit that you can say to your friend, you watch my pears in your tchum, ani eshmolcha perish betchumi. So the Gemara says, ve'ema maybe kol shani zakai b'miras v'shani lachshichala. Maybe all it means is anything, again, that I can say to a Jew to do for me, I can go and be mashik. So it's not necessarily a proof the way we wanted to say. So when Abba Shaul said klal, that there's a generality, lasuya mai, what is it coming to include? Lasuya adatan rabbana. That ein machshikin ala tchum labi behema. You cannot stand at the tchum border to bring an animal at Motzei Shabbos. But I saw meres chutz l'tchum. If the animal was standing chutz l'tchum, korel avibo, I can call to it and it can come, because dibor is not considered a meiser. I can't pull it, but if it comes to me when I call it, I didn't do a meiser. And on that, klal amar b'shol, caution is zakeh. If I can do something with my speech, rishayani lachshikalav, I could then spend the time at the tchum, even Motzei Shabbos. Then it said, I can go to the tchum even at the end of Shabbos, because I know I have to start preparing for a kala or for a funeral. V'oimrim lo, lech l'makom ploni. I can tell somebody there, you need to get a coffin and shrouds, and if you don't find it in that place, you can go to that place. But the Tanakama also says you can say to him, if you don't find it for $100, you can find it at some other place for $200. That you can't say on Shabbos, says Rabbi Yossi. That violates the principle of business on Shabbos. You can't say on Shabbos, go to a different place for a different amount of money. Mishnah. This is the Mishnah that the Gemara quoted. You can go on Shabbos to the end of the Tchum, so you can be there at the end of Shabbos, because you have to occupy yourself with cutting myrtle branches to make a crown for a kala, or you have to go get tachrichin and a coffin for a mace. Why? Because these are divrei mitzvah, which we said a person can do certain things if it's for cheftzei shamayim, not for personal use. Nachri shehevi chalilin b'Shabbos. Now, let's say a Gentile brought flutes into the city on Shabbos. Jews would use flutes at a funeral. Gentiles did not. So basically, when the Gentile brings it, you know he's bringing it for a Jew. So therefore, lo yispod ben b'Yisrael. If it was brought from outside of the tchum, you can't use it. If it was brought within inside of the tchum where you could get it, then you'd be permitted to use it. What if the Gentile made a coffin for a Jew? Or dug a grave on Shabbos. So if he dug it for a certain Jew, you couldn't use it for that certain Jew. But other Jews could use it. You cover Bo Yisrael. As long as you would wait b'chdei sheyasu. Not like Rashi. Rashi says for you would never be able to use it for that right. B'shvil Yisrael lo yikaver bo alamis. If it was known to be made specifically for a certain Jew, you'd never be able to bury that Jew. But the other Rishonim learn that for other Jews, let's say it takes 30 minutes to dig the grave, you'd have to wait 30 minutes, and then you could bury another Jew in it. The original Jew that it was made for, you can't. Some say even for that Jew, you could use it as well, as long as you wait, which is called b'chdei sheyasu. As long. What do you mean? Now, what does it mean, mimakam karov? Rava mimakam karov mamish, which means within the tchum. Ushmuel amar chayshinan shema chutz l'chayma lanu. That even it was outside the tchum, but they brought it in before the night. But and deika mastis and kavos d'shmuel the tani asalo aron l'chafelo kever. If they made a coffin or dug a grave, you cover Bo Yisrael. A Jew could be buried there. Alma misfeika shor. Since we don't know for sure who the Gentile dug it for, it's permitted if it's a suffix. Al-Khanami here as well, since we don't know exactly where it came from, is misfeika shor. However, Tanya Kavosei de Rab. There's another baraisa that supports Rab that we got to know for sure that it came from within the tchum. Because it says, Ir Yisrael v'nochrim darim ba, a city where there's both Jews and Gentiles living there. And there's a bathhouse open on Shabbos. And people go and take baths on Shabbos. And you want to use it, so imrov nochrim, if the majority of the city are Gentiles, so then la'erev rochetz b'miyad. So Shabbos night, Motzei Shabbos, a Jew can go in right away because the heating of the water was done for Gentiles. Imrov Yisrael Yamtinat Kadei Shiach Muchanim. If the majority of the population of the city were Jews, you have to wait until the period of time it takes to heat up water before you could use it. Mechza Mechza was 50%. Also, so again, you see, if it's a suffix, we go l'chumra. Now, Rav Yudah Omer Bambati Ktana, in a small bath, im yesh bo reshus, if there was a wealthy man who comes with a lot of servants, rochetz b'miyad, because his servants would have heated up the water for him, and therefore they wasn't heated up for you. My reshus, Omer Rav Yitzchak, great Rav Yudah. You're talking about a great person who comes with 10 servants that they heat up the water with 10 tea kettles at one time, but in a small bath, because because most of this was done for that person and not for the Jew himself. Then we say the Jew, you can't bury the Jew there. Why don't we wait until the period of time it takes to dig the grave? Because this grave was built, or because over there it said you could bury him right away. So the Gemara says, why not wait until it takes to dig the grave? So Ula says it's in a certain plaza where Jews would never get buried. Only non-Jews are buried there. Fine. Tinech kever. Fine. So that explains kever. But Aron, the coffin, even Gentiles use coffin. Maybe he made it for a Jew. Because that coffin was also on the Gentiles' kever, where normally they don't dig kvorim for Jews. That's why you could use it right away. It was not dug for a Jew. Mishnah. Oisin kotzorcha mace. On Shabbos, you can do whatever the mace needs. Sachin, you can anoint him with oil. Umadichina, so you can wash him. Uvavad shlo yazis bo aver. You wash him, you can't move one of his limbs because he's muktzah. You can remove the pillow from underneath the mace so that he lands on the sand, right? You can't touch the mace himself, he's muktzah, but you can touch the pillow underneath him so he rolls onto the sand. Why do they want him to roll on the sand?
Keep moist.
Bishvil sheyamtin, so he shouldn't rot because of the heat. And yes, it'll keep him fresh. Then kosher salechi, by a mace, the jaw would drop, and it would continue to drop, and they would want to prevent that because in rigor mortis it would stay that way. So you could tie the jaw to the skull. Lo sheyale, you can't tie it high enough that it lifts it. So that it doesn't continue falling. Let's say a beam in your house that broke, and you worried the house is going to collapse. You can support the beam with a bench, or baruchos amito, or part of your bed. You can't lift the beam. You can support it so that it won't keep on falling down. Lifting it looks like boneh, so you can't do that. Does everyone know where Kenny is? Is Kenny out of town?
I don't know. I've been sending him the link so he could follow the.
Okay, good. So you're fine. There was a Talmid of Rav Meir who followed Rav Meir into the bathhouse. Bikesh ladiach karka, to give cover to his Rebbe. He wanted to sort of smooth out the ground. You can't rinse off the ground. So he wanted to be losuch karka. He wanted to anoint the ground with oil. Omer lo ein sachin karka.
Presumably, this is all Shabbos, correct?
This is Shabbos. Now, afraid to Gemara, I understand. You just told me you're allowed to anoint a mace with oil on Shabbos. How come you can't anoint the ground? bekarka michlefe, mace bekarka lo michle. That means if you allow him to anoint the ground, you're going to make gumos. You might come to make a ditch. So we don't allow doing that. But by mace, you're not going to confuse it with any other problem. Now again, you have to do it in a way that you don't move the limb, because the limb is muktzah. Now the Mishnah said kol. I mean kol tzorchei mace. What is a kol asui? What does it come to include? Asui hadatan rabbanim. V'in kli mekar. You could bring a cold pot, or kli matkas, or a metal pot, in order to help cool down the mace so he won't rot in the sun. Menichla kreso. You put it on his stomach, so it won't swell. You could put a hole in all of the orifices of his body, so air will not go in there, because that will cause the body to swell more. We have Shlomo Amar b'chachmaso. Shlomo said in Koheles, Ad shlo yiratek chevel hakesef, zeh chut hashedra. It refers to the spinal column. The Toretz gulos hazav zeh ama. That refers to the male organ. V'tiskar kadal hamabua zeh hakerem, zeh hakeres. That's the stomach. V'noretz hagaga labor zeh peres. That's excrement in the stomach. V'cheinu omer v'zarisi peres apnechem. Peres kagechem. It means sometimes the stomach will rupture and it'll throw the dung right on its person's face. We're talking about by a mace. As if, here's all the food that you put into me, I'm giving it back to you. This refers to people who waste their time. They leave, they don't learn Torah, they spend all their times partying, and they fill themselves up. And eventually they're going to get, they'll get their Mida Keneged Mida. Amr of Levi, Amr of Papi, Amr Yeshua Le'echad, Lacha Shlosh Yomim, Kreson Nivkaus, right? After 3 days, the stomach will burst, and all the excrement will be on his face. Right? Here, I'm giving it back to you, that which you put inside of me. Mishnah. You don't close the eyes of the mace on Shabbos, even after the mace died. Because you're moving one of his limbs. We said if you move his limbs, it's muktzah. Now,
don't you have an Indian of covered up Rios at that point with the eyes?
No, but on Shabbos.
But it's covered. But there's a lot of things you can do on Shabbos for covered up Rios. So the person's lying there, and the eyes.
You can move him. You can move him out of the sun. We said not without doing. Remember, you got to put a loaf of bread there.
Yeah, no, I understand. So if you can move him out of the sun, so surely you have the person's lying in the middle of the room, and he's lying with his eyes open. It's not you're not moving one of the limbs. It's just an eyelid.
No,
it's
so
not
Rashi,
really a limb.
So Rashi says it is a limb. As a matz b'sein of b'shabbos.
Ernie, is a lid a limb?
But halachically, afilu achrit says that the mezis bo aver, says Rashi. I'm just reading Rashi.
I understand what you say,
but the eyelid.
Obviously, the definition of the Chachamim on a limb was different to the way we define a limb.
Exactly. So, for example, Walter, we would not consider the penis a limb, but certainly that's called an aver. It's called aver katan, and the penis is an aver.
Listen, you make your living from this, so you know.
No, and also other organs. We don't call organs limbs. They call organs avorim too. So absolutely, you're right.
It's a definition.
Our word limb refers to the 4 limbs, 2 arms and 2 legs. But Chazal had a different understanding of the word Aver. No question about it. Now here's something interesting. V'lo b'chol mitzias nefesh. If as the person is dying, you're not allowed to touch him. He's called a goses. And if you touch him and he dies, it's as if you killed him. That's why it's so, end of life. It's many of the things that make it difficult is by chain. Let's say somebody is at his deathbed.
You're doing CPR on the person. What, you killed him?
CPR is not dead yet.
He's a goyses. Come on. You're trying to resuscitate the person. You're trying to resuscitate the person. The person's heart stopped. You're trying to resuscitate the person.
That you're allowed to do because that's
but that's the same thing. And that the person doesn't resuscitate, so then you killed him. That's what the Gemara is saying, Ernie.
When someone is at his deathbed, you have to be very careful not to touch him, because until after Yetzias Neshama. After Yetzias Neshama, then you can close his eyes. What the Mishnah is saying, you can't close his eyes with Yetzias Neshama, because that's considered that you hastened his death, that you're shoifech dam. And regarding medical treatment, you're allowed to do medical treatment.
But who's the arbiter of the Yetzias Neshama?
Well, the physician at some point is going to declare the person. We declare it's 10:10. We declare the person dead. That the medical personnel is the arbiter. That's not a halachic definition. That's a medical definition. Of course, we get into this concept of
but what did the Chachamim? When the Chachamim, in other words, when they wrote the Gemara, they never had somebody to check the pulse, to check this. I mean, check the pulse, yes, but they never had something which could be a definite thing. So
they did.
They put a feather, what?
In the case of Mefakhin Sagal, right? If a wall fall on somebody on Shabbos, remember that's a famous machlokas. You're allowed to pull the rubble. So that the shaila is, do you start from his feet or do you start from his head? So that's the machlokas. So we paskin that you start from his head. Why? Because you want to get to his nose. Why his nose? Because the source of life is breathing.
Yeah, so, but that's why I asked. So then what did they put, a feather there? What did they put?
Yes, they put a feather there. Absolutely. And this supports Rabbi Avram's Professor Steinberg that brain death. What is brain death? When the doctors in 1976, the Harvard criteria, created a concept that even though the heart is still beating, if 2 doctors declare the person dead because they've tested his brain, blood flow, and they've done 5 neurological tests, the brain doesn't function, he's declared brain dead. And brain death in all 50 states is considered death, even though your heart is beating. And therefore, you can keep such a person alive. He's not alive, but until you harvest his organs, his heart and his liver and his kidneys, you can. It's not called murder because that person's already been declared dead. He's dead with a beating heart. Now, those chachamim that argued with the concept of brain death felt that death only comes when the heart stops beating, and therefore you couldn't harvest organs from a brain dead organ because according to them they were not dead. So today the Rabbanut accepts brain death. Rav Moshe accepted it. Eventually, Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, he did an experiment and he showed that so most of the modern day poskim agree with brain death. That's why they allow transplantation and harvestation from organs.
So the figure of breathing out, the figure of putting if you would put a feather by the person's nose, you would see that he's still breathing, even though he's brain dead.
No. I didn't explain fully. The brain stem controls breathing. So that means when the brain dies, there's no breathing anymore.
Oh, there isn't.
There's no, it stops breathing. Now we keep them breathing through a ventilator.
I don't know. I understand that. That's why people don't put a ventilator in, because they don't want to have that happen. Yes,
Exactly.
I understand.
Exactly.
That's why you have, what's that thing called? The DUR? What's it called? No.
DNR.
DNR, right.
DNR. Exactly. So this Mishnah this is a big sugya here in the dinim of the final parts of life, because exactly what Walter is worried about what do you do to a ghost, says that this is this Mishnah. Ein matzvus hameis b'Shabbos, v'lo b'cholam yitzias nefesh, and says the Mishnah, v'amatzim yitzias nefesh hareis shofech domim. If a person is still alive but he's a ghost, says, and you closed his eyes, and then he died, you are considered as if you killed him. So Rashi says, Torach muat mekarav misaso. Even a little hastening will hasten his death. Tan Rabban. If you close your eyes at near the point of death, you were the one who pushed him over the edge. Mashal in there, shakava. It's a flame that's sort of flickering out. And the person comes and puts his finger on it. Miyad kovsa, it's immediately gone. That means it's flickering. Any little nothing will completely extinguish it. That's the mashal and the nimshal. So if you want to, you don't want to do it physically with your hand. You smell some wine. The noise and shemen ben recently, you put some oil between his eyelashes. You take hold of his two big toes, and the eyes closed by themselves. I guess they tried it, and it works. A 1-day-old child that's alive, you can mechal Shabbos for it. David Melch Yisrael mace and mechal avos Shabbos. David Melch Yisrael is dead. You can't be mechal Shabbos for him. Tinik ben Yom Chai mechal avos Shabbos because Amr Torah Chala Lav Shabbos Echad Kadei Sheyishmor Shabbos is harbe. Be mechal for him this Shabbos so he can keep many Shabbos. Now, you notice this answer is one answer, but we have a pasuk that says v'chai bohem, v'lo sheyamus bohem. That's also gives us halacha that you're allowed to violate Shabbos because v'chai bohem. You have to. The Torah is to live with them, except for the 3 cardinal averos. So many of the Rishonim deal with the issue why were we given 2 reasons to be mechal Shabbos? And there are nafkaminas. There are nafkaminas between these 2 reasons. But this is one of the reasons why you can mechal Shabbos, because chalal of Shabbos echad k'dei sheyishmor Shabbos is hard. David Melech Yisrael meis en chalav. Now that's why David Melech, there's no chilul Shabbos from kivin shemeis adam bottom and a mitzvah. He doesn't have to keep Shabbos next week because the mace is bottom and a mitzvah. Hanulam Rav Yochanan, the mesim chofshi. Mesim are chofshi; they're free. Kivin shemeis adam nasa chofshi a mitzvah. They say that the Vilna Gaon on his deathbed was crying bitterly, and they asked him, "Why are you crying so bitterly?" Because he said, "Look at this tzitzis. We're wearing tzitzis. It costs 5 groschen. You have no idea how much value these mitzvahs are that we buy for nothing. And after a mace is gone, you don't have that opportunity. It's because you're chofshim in mitzvahs. V'tan Rishon ben Elazar Omer, Tinuk ben Yom Ochai, Ein tzarich l'shomim v'nachuldim v'nachbarim. An infant who's alive, you don't have to protect them from mice and weasels, because mice and weasels naturally stay away from live human beings. Aval Og Melech Haboshen Mace, Og the giant, dead, Sarch L'Shalom and Achulda and Achborim has to be protected from weasels and mice. Ne'amar Umora Achem V'Chitchem Yiyeh Al. That means the fear of human beings on animals. As long as the human being's alive, animals are afraid of them. Even shemeis batlo emaso. They're no longer fearful once you're dead. Amrav Papa Naktinon Arya Beitrei Loi Nafel. Rav Papa said a lion will not attack two people. Freit Gemara Kochazina de Nafel. We see lions attacking two people. So Ahuk the Rabbi Bar Ava, the Amar Rabbi Bar Ava, Ein Chai Shaletis for Adam, Ad Shenidmalo Kebehema. An animal will not attack a human being unless the animal views the human being as a behema. Shenamar Adam Bikar Bal Yali Nimshal Kebehemos Nidmu. Human being can sometimes be given sort of a demus of an animal. And if that happens, that's when a wild animal will lose his fear of the human being and attack him like he attacks other animals. Persons shouldn't sleep alone in a house. Lilith is the mother of all demons. This is some kind of demonology. Being alone in a house is not good because demons will attack you. V'tanya Rishon Elazar Oimer. Asay ad she'ata motze. Give charity as long as you can find people to give charity to. Because you know what? At some point you may not have money to give charity. Umotzilecha v'oidcha b'yadcha. Right, you have it now and it's still with you because you might lose it. V'avshlomo amar b'chachmaso u'zechores barecha. Remember who created you. When you're young. Because you can get older. That's called Yemei Hara. Eli Mei Zikna. That's aging. These years will come. A person will say, I don't want these years. When is that? Eli Mei Mashiach. She'ein b'hem lo zchus v'lo chova. This Tanakama holds, or the author of this brisa holds, that Yemosa Mashiach, there will not be wealthy people and poor. Everybody will be the same. And therefore there won't be poor people. You won't have the zechuyos of giving tzedakah to poor people by the time Mashiach. However, this is machlokas with Shmuel. He disagrees. He says society is going to be the same after Mashiach. There's going to be wealthy people, there's going to be poor people, everything's going to go. The only difference is we won't have Shibud Malchus. Eretz Yisrael won't be under domination.
That's the shit of the Rambam.
That we paskin like Shmuel. We paskin like Shmuel. That it's not going to be the lion that lies down with the lamb. Those are supernatural things. We hold, the Rambam certainly paskins that way, as Walter said, that everything, there's not going to be supernatural times with Mashiach. It's just going to be, the Jews will live on their land peacefully. Nobody will rule over them. There won't be Shibud Malchios, but otherwise everything will be the same sort of societally, demographically, physics, natural laws of science, that kind of thing. Ki lo yechdal evyon mikerva haaretz. Shmuel brings a proof. Says there will always be a time where there will be poor people, even after Mashiach. Person should always daven that he shouldn't become poor. Everyone certainly has a risk, no matter how wealthy they are, they can become poor. And if he doesn't become poor, babno, his child might be poor. Meaning, the Chazal saw that for wealth to survive 3 generations was a very rare thing. that somewhere in those 3 generations there'll be some poverty. Shenemar ki biglal hadavar hazeh. That means when a person gives charity and doesn't have a bad feeling in his heart about giving charity, he's happy that he's giving it, then he will not come to needing charity. The issue of wealth and poverty is like a circle. It's a circle. You start here and you end up here, and then you come back here. It's a circle. We have in our hands a Masorah that a Talmid Chacham will not become poor. We do see them become poor. He says, yeah, we see Talmidei Chachamim that become poor, but they don't go around collecting at the doorsteps. Unfortunately, in our generation, we see Talmidei Chachamim going around door to door. But it seems like in the Gemara that at that time, Talmidei Chachamim were protected from that.
I think it's a little different over here, but basically he's talking about Talmidei Chachamim collecting for themselves. What you see Talmidei Chachamim going around, see a lot of Talmidei Chachamim going around for their moizdus. I don't think.
But some go around today to collect for themselves too. You never met a Talmid Chacham going around, he's collecting for Hachnasas Kala, or he's collecting for himself. That we see that. Certainly, we see Talmidei Chachamim going around collecting for Mosdos. Absolutely.
For moizdus, I'm not sure the Gemara has the correct definition over here. So the guy who's collecting for himself is obviously not the greatest Talmid Chacham.
So that in a Chanami, there could be another shot.
Okay,
but here it's not that the Talmid Chacham knows or he has dignity. He's going to be protected because he's a Tzur Rabbanon. Hashem is going to protect him from that indignity.
So that's exactly that. So I'm saying, so if we know that the Gemara says that, so the one who comes to your doorstep and he says you have to help him, of course, but doesn't mean he doesn't mean that.
I hear what you're saying.
Doesn't mean that he's a certified Talmid Chacham.
I hear what you're saying. The other things that the
Gemara, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is giving you Avtocha here. So this is the Gemara.
So, by the way, the other Rishonim learn. I think this is very correct in reality. Usually, Talmidei Chachamim have a network. They're connected to lots of people. They teach people. They are chashuv of people.
Yeah, they won't have to come on to this.
So they don't have to come on because their network helps them. Exactly. Rab Chia said to his wife, Ki osi anya, when poor people come to our door, rifti, you should quickly give them bread. So that one day when your children need charity, people will be magdim for them food as well. So his wife immediately, like, did you just curse us? What are you saying? So Rav Chia said, no, Amar Lakra, Kasiv ki biglal hadavar hazeh, the ton of Rishval gal husha chayzer ba'olam. He said this is a reality, that our children or our grandchildren, this could happen. So you give bread, the first thing when a honey comes, give him some bread, because that way our family member, if Chas v'Shalom should happen to them, will be treated well as well. Tanya Galil Rabbi Oimer, v'nosam l'cha rachamim v'richamcha v'yirbecha. Right, Hashem should have mercy on you, and therefore other people should show mercy and compassion on you if you need it. Whoever has compassion for other people, Shamayim will see that, and eventually Shamayim will have rachim on that person. The person has no compassion. So Hashem sees that as well. So another pasuk in Koheles, until the light doesn't go out. That's human being's forehead, which gets all wrinkly. The The waning moon is the neshama of the elderly person. It wanes in his strength. His cheeks begin to sag. His eyesight, he begins to lose his eyesight. Because of crying in the past, he loses his eyesight. Crying, the body makes more tears and replaces the tears up until you're 40 years old. After 40, it doesn't come back so easy. Kuchla was some kind of medicine they put on the eye. Ad arboim shana marvech. Up until 40, it would work very well. Afilu malya kavisla de girdoi ukmimukim arvech lo mervech. It means even if you may lay it on really thick, it sort of stabilizes, but it doesn't improve. My kamashulon, what do we learn from here? The comment to all the say, Bali. Means the thicker you put it on, the better it is. Shoshana, yeah. Could you stay here in Dahlia?
You done?
Yeah, could you stay here? Just stay here.
Do you see Kubu?
Rav Chanina Shchibale Barti. Rav Chanina unfortunately lost a daughter. Lava Kabachel, they didn't cry. What do you mean, trying to gulp that? What do you mean? They took a chicken out of your house? You're not sorry? Tarti, Tichla V'Ivra. I don't want to lose a daughter. I don't want to become blind. So I withheld myself from crying because I know that crying damages the eyesight. There's 6 types of tears. Shalosh yafos v'shalosh rasha. 3 of them are good, 3 of them are bad. And then we'll learn about which are good, which are bad tomorrow. So tomorrow we will learn the Surah Rabbanan at 8 o'clock, and we will learn the